When I finished medical school and my internship, I went to work in the bush. And in the bush there were no lights, there was no electricity. So people went to bed when it got dark, or maybe an hour or so after, because they would have their kerosene lamps. But for the most part, people had to live and sleep with the cycles of nature. That sort of got me into the whole concept of rhythm and body rhythms. And sleep is just another body rhythm that we ignore. And you need to see sleep as a rhythm, and that's why I think going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time in the morning is very important. And during the day you're partying and you're building up the toxins and all these byproducts of the chemicals used during the day, and at night your brain is clearing that. If you're not clearing that at night, it's going to build up and build up and build up. So if you're not sleeping properly, it's like partying, having a party every night and not cleaning up the mess the next morning. So eventually it's going to get cluttered.
Hey guys, welcome back. It's Mike here with High Intensity Health Radio. We're standing outside of Dr. Frank Lipman's office. We're going to go upstairs and talk to him about his new book, 10 Reasons Why You Feel Old and Get Fat. So let's go up there and have a chat. Well, Dr. Lipman, thanks for making the time. I know you're a very busy guy. You're the author of over 4 books that are best-selling. And what I wanted to tease out from this interview is some of the clinical pearls that have a high hit rate, because you've been practicing functional integrative medicine for quite some time. You have a unique perspective, being that you're from South Africa. So I guess let's talk about diet. That's a nice entry point that has a lot of touch points throughout the body. What have you found in your career practicing functional medicine to be really effective in terms of
diet?
Yeah.
Well, the first thing would be there's not one right diet for everyone. Everyone's different. So as we are different on the outside, we're different on the inside. So I would say there is no one right diet.
Right.
Having said that, what seems to work best for most people in this day and age is people tending towards a low carbohydrate diet. But for most people, I take them off the sugar. So I get people off sugar, gluten, junk food, sometimes dairy, sometimes not, corn. But after that, many people are pre-diabetic or tending towards diabetes. So I tend to put a lot of people, especially as they get older, on lower carbohydrate diets. I take them off all grains, very few beans, lower their fruits sometimes even. So although I'd say there's no one right diet for everyone, I think the majority of my patients anyway do better on a sort of paleo type of diet.
Mm-hmm. Have you found that the older, like the baby boomers, that's hard for them to adopt that diet? Because for so long it was have whole wheat, high fiber, yes, and the low fat craze. How has that been?
Good question.
Yeah.
So I'm 61. My generation have a much harder time sort of conceptually even understanding that fat is actually good for them. Yeah. I mean, today, I see this every day, but today she's a 60-year-old woman. She couldn't wrap her head around that her low-fat eating was causing her problems. Mm. So yes, I do think my age group, people in their 50s and upwards, have a much harder time accepting that fat is not the problem and sugar's the problem, and sugar's the problem. So yeah, I think but younger people, because I'm seeing more and more people in their 20s, 30s, even 40s, I would say most of that generation, easy. Mm-hmm. They get it. So they get that sugar's the devil. Sometimes grains can be a problem, but I'd say my generation still are hooked into this low fat is the way to go, even though it's not working for them.
Right. What is interesting about that is, like your generation, right? Folks approaching 65 and so forth. There's the high correlation between elevated glycemic index and or consumption of high glycemic foods and neurocognitive inflammation and brain decline. So that they really need to shift to a lower carbohydrate, high fat diet, right?
Big time, because as you get older, you tend to metabolize carbs less well too. So part of the way I scare my age group is by telling them that Alzheimer's is now diabetes 3, so there's a sugar component there. So if you don't decrease your carbs and your sugars, there's probably more chance you're going to develop some brain issues. So it's part of how you need to scare people. But it's very hard to get people out of this low fat idea that fat, if I eat fat, if I don't have my egg, if I have the yolks and I don't eat my egg whites and I need to cut the skin off the chicken, etc., etc. So there's so many misperceptions about food, especially in my generation, and this is what I have to do. But the younger generation are much easier.
Yeah, I think
millennials or 20s and 30s are great.
Interesting. Yeah, it's amazing how that marketing message from the food industry is really like...
Well, it's from doctors, food industry, government guidelines. That's everyone. Everyone's been, hoodwinked into this low-fat nonsense. We've been conned, and the nutrition scientists, government, so government, doctors, nutrition scientists, everyone. So it's hard for people to sort of wrap their heads around the fact that, oops, we made a mistake.
Now, when it comes to nutritional ketosis, is that something, I know you talk about high-fat diets and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have enough experience with that. I mean, conceptually, I think for some people that's definitely a way to go. I personally don't have enough experience with that, but philosophically, I think there's a huge place for that, especially with what we're seeing today. I don't see that many people that actually need to go that far, but I think I don't have a problem with the ketosis aspect of it.
Yeah, there's some interesting researchers coming out about cognitive function and all that.
Absolutely, and I know for epilepsy in kids, I always do recommend them to see someone who's going to put them on a ketogenic diet. But I don't really work like to that extent. Not that I'm against it. I don't really, for the most part, find the need to actually go that extreme. But I'm not saying there's not a place for it.
Yeah, I've read before that what kind of motivated you to go on a high-fat diet, low-carb high-fat diet, was your own hemoglobin A1C. Do you want to share the backstory of that?
Yeah, I was this holistic doctor eating because I was scared of fat, like everyone else. I was sort of vegetarian for a long time, then I started eating meat, and even when I ate meat, I'd cut off the fat and, try eat the white chicken, and eating lots of whole grains, tons of fruit. I always ate tons of fruit growing up in South Africa. We used to fruit. So fruit, I thought, well, I used to eat tons of fruit, used to juice, and I became pre-diabetic. And, I couldn't understand. I was always a bit puffy, and, I'm a generally skinny guy, but I was a bit overweight, and I didn't even realize it. And I just sort of I hadn't had my bloods taken for a while. I had my bloods taken, and I had my hemoglobin A1C was high, and I had to look at what the hell am I doing, and that's when I really got it, and that's actually helped me with a lot of my patients too. So that was, I can't remember how long ago it was, but that sort of made me realize that this fat nonsense. So that's I don't know if it's 10, 5, 10, 7 years, I'm not sure how long ago it was. Yeah, it happened to me, and I thought I was preaching a healthy diet. Even my book Revive was sort of going, not in that direction, but to a certain extent. I hadn't really got, and that came out, 8 years ago, 2007. So even 8 years ago, I was still, I think that's when the shift started happening, about 8 years ago.
But let's go back to your roots in South Africa a little bit. When you travel to different countries, there's not so much this dogma of a high fat or low carb. People just eat real food. I noticed, like we were talking about going to Indonesia, what do, your family or, relatives or friends in South Africa, are they eating a low-carb, high-fat diet naturally? And can you talk about that?
South Africa is interesting. Well, first of all, when I grew up there, so this is in the 50s and 60s, people just ate the food. You'd go to your local butcher and get the meat. The farm stores had local, vegetables and fruits. So there wasn't much, or if any, factory farming. So you didn't have a choice. The food was just the food. And South Africa in those days was abundant with foods. So we all grew up eating healthy foods because that's what there was. We didn't even realize it. Now it's a little bit different. Although what's interesting in South Africa is there's a doctor there, Tim Noakes, who's a well-known sports doctor who became diabetic as well and realized it. And he used to preach a high-carb diet, and then he became diabetic and started preaching a low-carb diet. So he started this huge low-carb movement in South Africa. So South Africa is interesting because the food has become more unhealthy and more sort of factory farming and corporate driven, except now there's a big movement towards low carbohydrate diet because the obesity rates, diabetes, heart disease rates have skyrocketed. So when I grew up, it wasn't a problem really because that was the food you got. Now it's the same as America, except there is a low carb movement happening, which is interesting.
Yeah, it seems to be kind of a global phenomenon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. One of the aspects you talk about in your book about balancing hormones is really starting with diet and then stress reduction. So I feel like we cover the diet fairly well. Can we talk about your influence in Eastern medicine and how that has changed your practice a little bit and really emphasize stress reduction as a therapeutic tool to balance physiology?
Sure. So I think that the big thing with Eastern medicine for me was it was my first real alternative way of seeing the body, where I actually learnt a different philosophy of seeing the body. I mean, I was dabbling in homeopathy and I a little bit of herbs and a little bit of started with acupuncture, but when I really started getting into Chinese medicine, it's a different philosophy. You're talking about how do you improve function, how do you create balance, which is a very different way of looking at the body than Western medicine. Yeah. Exactly. So you're looking for, you weren't looking to treat a disease, you're looking to create balance, you're looking to improve function. So that sort of blew my mind because that made me rethink everything I'd been taught in Western medicine. So that was the big thing about Chinese medicine, rather than the stress reduction. The stress reduction came after I got into meditation and yoga, so it came from sort of a different Eastern philosophy. So, but Chinese medicine really made me think differently about the body. I really got into stress reduction through yoga and meditation and Buddhism. And then the way I practice, I've just brought everything I've learned from all these traditions and I just dump it all into my little basket of tools.
Yeah, and just pick one when needed for personalize. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What's interesting about blood sugar regulation, we talked a little bit before about the rampant prediabetes and diabetes and obesity and so forth, is berberine has been used for thousands of years. Yeah. Do you want to talk about that in the Chinese medicine applicability?
Yeah, well I love berberine because it's anti-microbial, so it kills bugs in the gut, which most people have. So I use berberine all the time. In my cleanse has berberine in. I'm using berberine as one of the key antimicrobial herbs in my gut cleaning formulas all the time. And it just so happens to balance or help balance sugar levels too. So, the two probably commonest issues I see are sugar imbalance and a gut flora imbalance are helped, not necessarily taken care of itself, but are helped by berberine. So berberine is probably one of the most common popular herbs that I use all the time. I love berberine.
That's awesome. Yeah, me too. The research, it's pretty amazing. The research showing head to head, compared to metformin in terms of its efficacy it's really interesting. So you mentioned like gut imbalances and blood sugar, and so there's some interesting data showing that prediabetes really starts in the gut with the gut hormones and all that. Have you seen a correlation there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a researcher, but clinically, I always start with the gut. And you asked me earlier, my Chinese medicine influence. I was always taught by my Chinese medicine teachers, Ephraim Korngold and Harriet Beinfeld, who wrote Between Heaven and Earth. They're sort of like the mommy and daddy in a way of Chinese medicine here. They always told me, when you don't know what to do, treat the gut. The gut's the center. And I treat the gut all the time. So part of what I do in my practice, I often start with the gut. Often when you treat the gut, people lose weight, people's emotional state, their anxiety, depression gets better, their immune system gets better, and it all makes sense because 70% of your immune system is around the gut. The gut's called second brain. The more neurotransmitters are made in your gut than in your brain. So, and I'm finding, that people, and it's hard to say because I'm also putting people on lower carb diets and changing their diets at the same time. So it's hard to say, but absolutely, I think there is a correlation between optimizing gut function and optimizing sugar imbalances. So, but yeah, just clinically, I would say that's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One thing that comes to mind when you were explaining, you said low carb, high fat. A lot of the research about the microbiome has been extrapolated from animal models. I mean, we have more human studies coming out, but one of the ways that they perturb the microbiome in these animal model studies is use a high-fat diet, but it's usually corn oil.
Exactly. This is a problem.
Yeah.
So this, I'm so disillusioned. Science, right? These scientists and the science and the research sometimes, first of all, you can cherry pick whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so disillusioned with the way it's all manipulated and how everyone uses, and I do the same thing. I'll look at the studies and I'll post the studies that I want on my page too, that I want to see, that confirm my beliefs. But ultimately, what I do and what I believe is what I see clinically in my practice. I'm seeing so many people and I'm seeing what works.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if there are no studies showing that gluten is a problem with a lot of, whether gluten's a problem or not, if there's no research. I see it clinically every day. I don't care, and I'm not saying there are no studies, but I don't care if people are saying, well, where are the studies of low carb diets? I think there are studies, and as with gluten, I see it helping clinically. So I don't really, I'm a clinician. Yes, I think doing studies are important, but I think a lot of the studies are, as you say, someone will do a study with the wrong type of fats, and then they say, well, a high-fat diet causes a problem. Yeah, if you give the wrong fats, it's a problem. So I'm disillusioned with the whole scientific method as it's practiced today.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying all scientific method is bad, but it's just, it's not something that I necessarily is going to guide the way I treat people.
Right, because you're seeing it in your clinic, and sometimes, like you mentioned, the details and the nuances don't make the headlines.
Absolutely.
Right, so the
Most
New York
times,
Times.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And then the headlines get manipulated, yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating.
And so...
And I asked that question because on your desk is a Genova Diagnostics. It looks like a CDSA of sorts. And so I was curious, what sort of stool shifts have you seen in people?
Well, I don't even, I don't even use this so much because I'm not sure how accurate those results. I go clinically. I used to use this more. The Genova test, I'm not sure. I think this testing is in its infancy. So I'm not convinced on the accuracy of these tests either. I use it as a last resort.
Yeah.
For the most part, we're changing people's diet, using antimicrobial herbs, antifungal herbs, sometimes antimicrobial drugs or antiparasitic drugs or antifungal drugs, trying different probiotics and seeing how people respond. Yeah. I'm not sure I think that can be helpful, but if you just go by test results, it starts becoming, and treating test results rather than clinically treating the person, I think that can become a problem.
That's beautiful. So you kind of rely on your intuition,
and
patient presentation.
And how people do, yeah.
Yeah.
What their histories, their stories you often tell you, yeah.
That's fabulous. There's not a lot of research that I've seen on Candida and in terms of like how we understand it to be a problem in functional medicine. So what patient presentation or common complaints leads you to think that someone has a yeast versus bacterial imbalance?
Well, I think it often goes together. Now, for instance, when I see people who are SIBO positive, small intestinal bowel overgrowth, they often have yeast infections. And you often have to treat the one and then treat the other. Parasites, yeast go together. So I think yeast is very interesting because it's hard to diagnose with tests. But clinically, there's usually a history. And I see, like today, I saw a young woman had been on antibiotics for her acne for years. Obviously, she's going to get yeast. So once again, the history usually tells you, and it's pretty common. So they're often gas, bloating, brain fog, fatigue, skin. They can't clear up their skin. Sometimes they have vaginal yeast infections. Sometimes they don't. So I use I have herbs. I use nystatin, which is relatively light, and I often use Diflucan or Iitraconazole, real stronger antifungal herbs, but not for a day or two at a time, for a couple of weeks at a time. So, as I explain to my patients, it's hit and miss sometimes. It's trial and error.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got to kill parasites, sometimes you've got to kill parasites and yeast, usually you've got to kill bad bacteria, yeast, and parasites. So often we try with herbs and we see what happens. The herbs are generally more benign. The drugs are stronger but can be a problem.
So there's less collateral damage with the herbs, so to speak. So
exactly.
you like to go there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And so if symptoms don't improve with the safer, the herbs and so forth, then you'll go to the big.
Absolutely,
the
yeah.
big guns.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many, and I always explain to patients, it's going to take months. There's no quick fix. But for most of them, we put them on a paleo type of diet. I mean, for most of these people, we take them off grains because they often irritate and they can be, tend to, cause sugar problems. So the diet tends to be a paleo type of diet for these patients.
Yeah.
And then you need the herbs and the probiotics and often the drugs too.
Right. Let's transition a little bit, if we could, to hormones. I know that's a big part of your practice and a big concern for a lot, particularly women, but also men. And I love your approach. It's really simplistic in the sense that you have to get the foundation working for the hormones.
Yeah.
So where do you start with patients?
I start with food and stress, because food and carbs are going to affect your insulin, and stress and sleep is going to affect your cortisol and the other hormones related to that. And if you can get your insulin and cortisol under control, the other hormones often fall into place. Thyroid sometimes needs to be boosted, but I tend not to, and last resort, I work with a compounding pharmacist. Sometimes we need to give women progesterone and bioidentical hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Most times, if you balance the insulin, you get the cortisol more under control, you get them to do stress reduction, low carb type of diet. Most times, I give them acupuncture. For the most part, that is what helps the other hormones. Some women need some more help. Some people need some thyroid support. So some people need adrenal support, and I use herbs for that, adaptogens. But I'd say that by far the majority of patients, when you get those hormones under control, they don't need, the sex hormones.
But have you found that to be a problem in terms of, like, patients want the immediate fix? Right, like people are coming in with depression or low libido, so do they want the quick fix, or are they okay working on all those other?
I think it varies. I think most people who come in to me, once you explain to them, what I say to people, if you want to do estrogen or progesterone, I have no problem. That's your choice. It's not for me to tell you to do that. And if you are going to do that, then you do the bioidentical hormones. I think that's a personal choice. But if you don't want to do them and you don't feel comfortable doing them, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable telling you to do them, then let's try this other stuff and see what happens. Some women just want to do bioidentical hormones, and then they work with my compounding pharmacist. A lot of people want to try more benign stuff first. So I think that's a personal choice. I'll support someone who wants to use those hormones, but I'll tell them that it's not what I'm necessarily recommending, but if that's what you want, I'll support you doing it. You need to know more about it. I personally don't do it, and I say to them, my wife doesn't do it. She did a short period of it, and it's your call.
Yeah.
I mean, some women love the hormone. I mean, they love it, and that's fine. That's what they want to do, and they're feeling good. I on a gut level don't think that the bioidentical hormones are necessarily dangerous, but they're hormones and we don't really know, so why? This is what I tell patients, we don't really know, so
why risk it potentially?
Yeah, exactly. And and a lot of the hormones, a lot of the big hormone doctors use growth hormone, all these type of hormones. It's not what I recommend or choose to do.
Yeah. What would your advisors and colleagues and so forth in the Chinese medicine, what do they think about hormone use?
I think, it's the same thing. My Chinese medicine teachers use them when necessary. They use a lot of adaptogens, like, which is what would be done in their cultures. But they use hormones when necessary. I mean, my Chinese medicine doctor, often we talk, and he often recommends thyroid for sure, because I think thyroid is an issue. You often need thyroid hormone. But once we get into progesterone and estrogen and testosterone, I think their philosophy is probably similar to mine. We try the other stuff first, and then it's up to you as a patient. What do you want? I mean, is that what you want? That's your choice. I don't know if it's right. It's not for me to judge whether it's right or wrong. I don't know what's right or wrong.
Yeah. Right, good point.
But for me, it's wrong, personally. or I choose not to do it. I'm not saying so. I choose not to do it.
Right. So Dr. Lipman, I love that explanation on hormones. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And the kind of the question, the reason why I brought that up is there's this myth that as we're just aging, right? And a lot of people are trying to slow down the biological age and so forth. And so let's talk about kind of why that's more a myth and talk about optimal function with life.
Sure. So this comes from the Chinese medicine perspective too. This concept of aging is interesting because a lot of people my age think that they're losing their memory, they have aches and pains, they're putting on weight, they can't function as well as they used to and they just put it down to old age. And is it old age or is it just decreasing in function? Now, there's a spectrum between, what we call, let's say, health and illness. And everyone's somewhere along the spectrum. And to me, aging is you moving along the spectrum towards illness. And same as you can move along the spectrum towards health, it's the same with aging. If you improve the functioning of your muscular skeletal system, of your nervous system, of your digestive system, you're going to feel more vital again. So to me, aging is just a decrease in function. So yeah, I'm 61. I can't do, my knees screwed, so I can't do the yoga I used to do. I can't run anymore. When I play tennis, it hurts my knees, so I adjust it. So I ride my bike more. I don't do the same type of yoga. I can't have these late nights like I used to have. I can't eat the same amount of crap that I used to have. So you adjust. But I still feel vital. I feel fantastic. I do everything I want to do. I just have to be a little bit more careful with how I treat my body. So to me, it's about improving function. If you can improve function, you can stay slim, you can stay vital, your memory can, obviously everything's going to go down a little bit, but you don't have to have aches and pains. You don't have to have the normal symptoms of aging. So it goes back to what we talked about originally about function. And that's that Chinese medicine concept. If you improve function, you're going to feel better, you're going to be healthier. So to me, aging is really a decrease in function rather than there's nothing you can do about it. There's a lot you can do about it. Yeah. And drugs are not going to do it.
That's beautifully said. What comes to mind is I was in Bali a few weeks ago, and there were some older women carrying dirt on their head. And they must have been 75, 80 plus, just walking step by step, carrying this dirt. And so, the function may be declined slightly, but they're still out there, performing their life and having a good time, supporting their family. So what comes to mind from the book, so we can kind of help people optimize function, you talk a lot about sleep and the importance of repairing our body during sleep.
Sure. Sleep is one of those areas that most people don't realize how important it is. Now, sleep is when your body repairs itself. The metaphor I use all the time, there's something called the glymphatic system in the brain. I don't know, have you heard of the glymphatic system? So that's the system that clears the toxins and the byproducts of what's used during the day up at night. So the metaphor I use, and I got it from Ariana Huffington. It's actually, I think she talks about it in her new book too. If you're having a party every night, the next morning someone has to clean up the mess. Yeah. But if you keep having parties every night and you don't clean up the mess every morning, it's going to get dirty and cluttered and it's going to become a problem. And that's the same in the brain. During the day you're partying and you're building up the toxins and all these byproducts of the chemicals used during the day, and at night your brain is clearing that. If you're not clearing that at night, it's going to build up and build up and build up. So if you're not sleeping properly, it's like partying, having a party every night and not cleaning up the mess the next morning. So eventually it's going to get cluttered. So I love that metaphor. But if you're not sleeping properly, it's going to affect, the cortisol, the leptin, the ghrelin, all the hormones that are involved in hunger and satiety, and it's going to affect how you eat, what you eat. So sleep is one of those ignored pillars of health in our culture anyway. I'd say 70% of people I see don't sleep well. And the people that sleep well tend to be healthier. a lot of people, especially in New York, think sleep is something that they'd rather not do because they're too busy doing other things. Sleep is really important, and it's taken me a long time to get there too. But now, that's why for me to have a late night is really tough, because I like to be in bed between 9 and 10. If I go to bed after 10, I'm literally like an old man, because I wake up early. I wake up at the same time every day. So I need to be in bed so I can get my 7-8 hours in. If I get 7 hours sleep, I'm fine. But if I have a late night, it screws me up. So I think it's important. Sleep is one of those areas that affects every part of our bodies. People who don't sleep well put on weight. People who don't sleep well have all sorts of problems. So I think sleep is a huge issue, and I'm so pleased. I think Ariana's book's going to be big, and I think sleep's going to get more into the consciousness of people now.
Yeah, there's a lot of research. People don't understand, like night shift workers tend to have higher prevalence of cancer and
absolutely.
diabetes.
It's because of the whole rhythm. But what I really saw in South Africa, and I think I put it in my one book, when I finished medical school and my internship, I went to work in the bush. And in the bush there were no lights, there was no electricity. So people went to bed when it got dark, or maybe an hour or so after, because they would have their kerosene lamps. But for the most part, people had to live and sleep with the cycles of nature, and there was no real choice. There was no electricity, and you didn't have the problems that sort of got me into the whole concept of rhythm and body rhythms. And sleep is just another body rhythm that we ignore, and you need to see sleep as a rhythm, and that's why I think going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time in the morning is very important. And when you don't have electricity, it's easier to do that.
So what tools do you recommend for patients? I know that you're sold on it, right? You try to go to bed between 9 and 10, you get up at the same time, but a lot of folks are checking iPads, iPhones, which affect the rhythm.
Yeah, so I have this concept that I call an electronic sundown. So TV off, phone off, you're not at the computer, all your electronics off by 9 o'clock. And then you get into bed or whatever time it is, let's say 10 o'clock, transition period to go to sleep, because you need to transition between your daytime activity and sleep, and then you sleep in a pitch dark room. But I think an electronic sundown is a good concept. No phones, no TV, no computer for at least an hour before you go to bed.
Yeah, that's easy for people to remember. I love that word.
Yeah, it is a great term, yeah.
One thing that I've experienced with periodic sleep disruption is there can be an anxiety associated with going to sleep, like if the prior night before you were restless. How do you overcome that with the aging folks? Because we know sleep changes with age, right?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm embarrassed to say, I actually meditate in bed. I used to get up in the morning and go to my little meditation place. Lately I've been meditating in bed, and it's been fantastic. So I think what I teach people to do is try and learn, so when I'm trying to teach people to meditate, I say, you know what, when you're lying in bed, this is what you do. Start feeling your body on the bed. I teach them on the table. Start feeling your back, feeling the bed, feel your feet, feel your hands. So you're teaching them breathing and mindfulness techniques, but you're teaching them to do it in bed. So you're teaching them to relax. So and we recommend it to our patients, one of the most popular apps is this Headspace app, which we tell people, what's like guided, and people love it.
Listen to Andy, right?
Yeah, I don't know him, but it's very popular and it's great. So we're recommending it all the time. And it's just guided, relaxation for 10 minutes. He's made it simple. So if you can make it simple for people, I think it's good. So I've got into this habit myself, and I actually really like it, and I'm teaching people. Now, I know it's not politically correct in meditation circles, but, if it works, it works.
Right. So basically what you're saying is you don't need to sit on a meditation pillow.
Well,
you can do what works for you.
I don't know if that's right,
Yeah.
but if you really want to learn meditation, it's probably best to be in a certain type of position with your spine aligned. But I think just teaching people to relax and learn how to breathe and get out of their head is a great entry point. Same as yoga is a wonderful entry point into meditation. I think meditation is very hard to learn for most people. For me, it took, I've been struggling for years, but I think yoga was really helpful for me because I had to get into my body. So by getting into my body, I got out of my head. So I think teaching people to breathe and get into their body, even in bed, can be helpful.
It's interesting you bring that up because I have a similar experience. Like I've been trying to do meditation for a while, and yoga really helped me get there because connecting with your breath is very, it's similar. So
yoga is fantastic. Yoga is definitely a way into meditation. Yoga is a moving meditation.
Headspace, like I couldn't agree with you more, Dr. Lipman. It's an awesome app. I recently found this app called the Muse. It's a quantitative EEG headband. I found that to be helpful.
The Muse.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Good. Okay, thanks.
Another tool there. So what else from the book that you found that folks should know about?
Well, I think as you get older, taking certain supplements become more important. I know people say that's nonsense. I see the supplements helping. There are a couple of key supplements that I find as you get older are helpful. Coenzyme Q10, alpha-lipoic acid, glutathione, a mitochondrial formula. These are all helpful as you get older, but it's just one part of it. But I do think supplements are helpful. Vitamin D, fish oil, probiotics, all the standard ones too. And then the other aspect that we haven't touched on, which I think is key to aging well, is what I call Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a South African term which means what makes us human is the humanity we show each other. And I have a whole chapter on it in the book. And it's all about community and compassion. And I've extrapolated that in the book to also incorporate meaning and passion. Because if you have meaning in your life, chances are you're going to age better. If you have community, there are lots of studies to show if you age alone and you're isolated, you're not going to age as well. So having a community, peers who feel the same way as you, and you feel part of that community. You're passionate about something. It can be your family, it can be anything. There's meaning in your life, whether it's volunteering for something, you want to change the world, whatever it is. All these things are really important for aging. So it's not just about taking the right supplements, exercising, eating well. I think that these undefinable aspects of life, which we're losing in America, the community aspect is sort of going on many levels. So I think passion, meaning, community are really important, especially as you get older.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I just wonder, as a clinician, how do you teach that? How do you encourage this?
You can't teach it, but you can encourage people. You can give them examples. Let's say I see someone, let's say I see a lot of middle-aged women, their kids have just left for college. They've spent all these years putting their time and effort into seeing that their kids are happy and growing up, and now the kids have left home and they have this empty nest syndrome. So you encourage them to find a non-profit or something that's where you can give back, volunteering your time, teaching, somehow finding something that has meaning to you, and people get that. So they need to fill that void that the kids, because when you have kids, you're trying to get them to grow up to be good citizens and whatever it is. You're putting all that energy into that, and find something else to put that energy into. I think that's really important.
Yeah, that's really important. And what's unique, I think we've kind of come full circle, because you need the biochemistry to be optimized, because otherwise you can be anxious, and then maybe you wouldn't meet that person to create the opportunity.
Yeah, it's all works together. There's not an either or. It's not one more important than the other. I think they're all important.
What would you say to someone that doesn't have a hobby, doesn't have a lot of community? Would you just suggest to them to maybe start volunteering or reading books, or?
Yeah, I think finding, you can find a community, whether it's in your local church, a soup kitchen. There's so many ways you can do it. I think Facebook and the internet is quite interesting because on some level it's creating some community, although I think I'm not sure that type of community is I think people need proper community too, but find something that you want to be part of. Find people who think the same way as you. So I think most people can find that. Find your tribe.
Yeah.
So
it's really interesting you bring that up. I think what makes our community, the functional integrative medicine community, so strong is that a lot of folks are connected online and offline and communicate so much and frequently, and at these meetings go to dinner and share a lot of information, so it's really kind of interesting.
Yeah, so people need to find their own community. I don't think it's that. I think that's one of the easier aspects for most people to actually find, whether it's in your local community where you live, whether it's, you know, from work or your beliefs. I think it's easier today because of the online stuff to find those type of communities. Got to find your tribe. I think it's so important.
Yeah, there's blogs and communities on knitting and
absolutely,
dog walking, everything you can think of, which is pretty amazing. Well, Dr. Lipman, I really appreciate you coming on the show and
thanks for having me.
It's been a lot of fun. We have 3 final questions that are more of kind of a rapid fire type format, but if there was one herb, nutrient, or botanical that you just couldn't live without, maybe you're going to be stranded on a desert island, vitamin D and omega-3s are covered, what would it be and why?
Turmeric.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of turmeric, just for its anti-inflammatory effects. I love turmeric. I use turmeric a lot. So if I had to, after vitamin D, fish oils, probiotics, probably turmeric.
There's a lot of great research there. Would you consider that in kind of your anti-aging
I'll put it's one of the herbs or anti-aging supplements I talk about.
That's fabulous. So we know you're a busy guy. You're running 1111 Wellness Center here in Manhattan. You have a lot of practitioners working under you. We know that successful people have a morning routine. You know, we want to know kind of what's your personal morning routine look like?
My morning routine is wake up early, automatically. Lately I've been meditating in bed. I used to get up, and then I went through a stage when I got up, and my one room is my daughter's room is my meditation. My daughter doesn't live at home. It's my meditation room all set up, and then I have my office, but I found that I was going straight to my office and missing my meditation, so I now meditate in bed, which is actually working perfectly for me. I'm not necessarily recommending it for everyone. I meditate in bed for at least 15-20 minutes, sometimes longer. I get up, I do a little bit of work on the computer, then me or usually my wife will make my morning shake, which is part of my routine. It's my chocolate whey protein with some coffee, some almond butter, some coconut oil, avocado, some cinnamon, chia seeds, usually coconut milk tin, the BPA-free tin, the tropical whatever. Sometimes a coconut milk from the carton, but usually the can. What else is it? It's the almond butter. I don't know. It's just full of fat, and she makes it thick, so it's like an ice cream. I have my ice cream in the morning, my mocha ice cream, because it's coffee and chocolate. Absolutely delicious. And then I come to work. I have I take the train into work because I live in the suburbs. I have my iPod with me, and I'm a big music freak. So I have, my music. I put my iPod on the train, listen to my music, and I come to work. So that's my morning routine when I'm working. When I'm not working, I get up and I go for a long ride, and I go for a ride, and I have an infrared sauna at my home. I go for a ride, turn on my sauna before, come have my sauna, and that's the beginning of my day. So it depends. Work, I tend to not exercise in the morning, but I'm not working. So I usually work Monday through Thursday, but the other days I'm riding in the morning, saunaing, and then start my day.
Oh,
It's pretty
fantastic.
simple, but I always have that shake. I'm addicted to my ice cream in the morning.
I love that. A couple of things came up. I'm curious, and I think our listeners will be too. The coffee, is it ground coffee? I read this in the book. I was curious. Ground coffee, or do you pour the coffee in? You mentioned
Well,
you mix it.
it depends. So usually she's using the organic ground coffee.
Okay.
We're not coffee drinkers. This is a new thing for me. But sometimes she'll make some coffee, but that is usually the ground organic coffee.
Yeah.
I don't know what. I'm not even sure what is. It's coffee and organic coffee in a jar.
That sounds awesome. That's great.
It's easy.
Yeah, it sounds really easy. And with the infrared sauna, how many minutes are you going in?
Half an hour.
Wow.
So I set it for half an hour. I love my infrared sauna. And then when it's warm, I do my bike, infrared sauna, swim. Boom. Jump into the cold pool. So
Love that.
I love in New York, we have like 4 months of that. So I really enjoy those 4 months. But my infrared sauna I try to do all the time. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, me too. The brain cognitive benefits and stress reduction after the sauna, it's amazing.
Fantastic. I love my sauna. I just feel wonderful. Yeah.
That's really awesome. So the kind of final question here, if you were to bump shoulders with Barack Obama or maybe someone from the World Health Organization and could share with them one lifestyle or health tip, what would come to mind, a political figure type person, what would you want them to know and why?
I'd want them to know that our current medical system is a crisis care medical system that is wonderful if you break a bone, you're having a heart attack, burst an appendix. But that crisis care model is effective for probably less than 20% of patients having problems. So you're not addressing the vast majority of people that are going to the medical system. And because of that, you're bankrupting the country. Billions of people are suffering unnecessarily. And there is a better way. And it's not throwing away Western medicine, but using Western medicine where it's appropriate, but acknowledging that there's another system that can actually help, billions of people, help, the economies of so many countries because it's bankrupting countries. And it's actually not such a hard solution. It's when are you going to get it? When are you actually going to get it? So the metaphor I always use, it's like growing up in apartheid and knowing that this is obviously so wrong, and like everyone's walking around, well, this is just the way it is. It's the same thing. I feel the same way about the medical system now that I did growing up during apartheid in South Africa. Now everyone apartheid was bad news. That's so obvious.
Yeah.
It's going to come to a stage where hopefully it's in soon, but it's going. How could you have not seen that? So that's my frustration. That this is so obvious. It's not even brain stress. It's simple. It's like obvious.
Yeah. So it's kind of a parting piece of advice. Do you think that we're going to have to hit rock bottom for that awareness?
God, if we haven't hit rock bottom so far, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. You know what? As I said earlier, I'm so disillusioned with the system and scientists, and it's so complicated and convoluted now because they're political, economic, corporate issues. There's so many factors that are, determining how we practice medicine, what studies get done, what people believe, and it's being pushed. There's a corporate, political, economic agenda. It's not what's best for the country, what's best for people, what's best for our health.
Yeah.
That's not really what's being thought. That's not what's driving the research and what's happening.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think on the plus side is the information like your books and
it's starting to change.
Summits. People are making they're more conscious of their purchases, and
it's starting to change. You're the millennial. It's a new generation. It's great. I love it. So it is changing. But it's not coming from the system. Right. It's a grassroots movement.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful.
It's great to see.
Yeah.
Dr. Frank Lipman, author of 10 Reasons Why You Get Old and Fat and How You Can Stay Young, Calm, Slim, and Happy. I know you have multiple books. You have a great website. If folks want to just learn more about your work and see all your publications, where should they go?
The easiest to go, we're going to have one website. It's just bewell.com.
Okay.
So it's going to be bewell.com, and it's also drfranklipman.com, but bewell.com is now going to be the website that overarching everything.
Perfect.
Be well.
Be well. I love it. Great to hang out with you and
You
chat with
too.
you. Keep up the great work.
And you keep up the great work too.
Thank you so much.
Okay.